Item number 400. Sewer excavation, trenching, and backfilling. 401 Description. This section shall govern the excavation, trenching, and backfilling for sanitary sewers and pipe culverts, unless otherwise noted on the plan details and the specifications. The work shall include all necessary pumping or bailing, sheeting, drainage, the construction and removal of any required cofferdams and any incidental construction. All existing utilities shall be protected from damage during the excavation and backfilling of trenches, and if damaged, shall be replaced by the contractor at his expense. Unless otherwise shown on the plans, bid proposal, or contract documents, all excavation shall be unclassified, and shall include all materials encountered regardless of their nature or the manner in which they are removed, to include but not limited to rock, stone, sand, organic material, or whatever material is encountered. All excavations, trenching, and shoring shall conform to item number 700 trench excavation protection. Where construction is within the limits of the floodplain of a river, creek, or stream, the contractor is required to keep the floodplain clear of potential obstructions to flood flows. Potential obstructions include excavated material, waste material, stockpiled fill material, temporary roads, heavy construction equipment, etc. Under threatening weather conditions where flooding is possible, obstructions shall be immediately removed by the contractor. 402 Excavation. The contractor shall perform all excavation of every description and of whatever substances encountered, to the lines and grades shown on the plans or determined by the owner's engineer. During excavation, material suitable for backfilling shall be stockpiled in an orderly manner a sufficient distance from the banks of the trench to avoid overloading and to prevent slides or cave-ins. All excavated materials not required or suitable for backfill shall be removed and wasted as indicated on the drawings or as selected by the contractor and approved by the owner's engineer. Such grading shall be done as may be necessary to prevent surface water from flowing into trenches or other excavations, and any water accumulating therein shall be removed by pumping or by other approved methods. Sheeting and shoring shall be done as may be necessary for the protection of the work, adjoining property, and for the safety of the personnel. Unless otherwise indicated, excavation shall be by open cut, whether by hand, backhoe, ram hoe, rock saw, or whatever method necessary. Short sections of a trench may be tunneled, if in the opinion of the owner's engineer, the pipe or structure can be safely and properly installed or constructed, and backfill can be properly tamped in such tunnel sections. 1. Blasting. Where permitted and allowed by SEWER as an acceptable trenching option, blasting shall be performed in accordance with appropriate criteria established by the National Fire Protection Association 37 TAC Part 13 and all local, county, state, and federal codes and ordinances. The contractor shall be responsible for obtaining all permits at no cost to the owner. Blasting for utility excavation must be done in such a manner as to minimize the fracturing of rock beyond the required excavation. The contractor shall consider the elevation of utilities in relation to the blasting charge and the relative alignment of existing and proposed trenches. Blasting within such areas shall be accomplished only by qualified contractors who hold blasting licenses from a qualified agency such as the San Antonio Fire Department in Bexar County. Any damage to existing utilities resulting from blasting shall be repaired at the contractor's expense. Sand shall not be used for bedding for backfill in trenches that have been blasted. 2. Archaeological. Unidentified archaeological sites. If the contractor should encounter a section of an acequia, early Spanish irrigation ditch, or any other archaeological deposits during construction operations, the contractor must stop excavation immediately and contact the SEWER inspector who will call the appropriate personnel, San Antonio City Historic Preservation Officer at 210-299-8303, for an archaeological investigation as per Section 35 to 432(3) of the City Code, unidentified sites archaeological. The contractor cannot begin excavation again without written permission from the SEWER. If more than 3 days are required for investigation, not including holidays and weekends, and also the contractor cannot work on other areas, the contractor will be permitted to negotiate for additional construction time. The contractor shall submit a request in writing within 10 days after date of the first notice. If the time required for investigation does not exceed 3 days for each event, contract duration will not be extended. 3. The contractor shall provide and maintain barricades, flags, lighting, and other safety devices as required by local, state, and federal codes and ordinances and conduct work to create a minimum inconvenience to the public. Temporary suspension of work does not relieve responsibility for the above requirements. 4. The contractor shall at all times conform to all applicable regulations of Subpart P entitled Excavation, Trenching, and Shoring of OSHA Safety and Health Regulations for Construction, and all applicable state and local rules and regulations. 403. Trenching. 1. Trench sides. Walls shall be vertical and the practice of undercutting at the bottom or flaring at the top will not be permitted unless at the owner-engineer's direction. In special cases where trench flaring is permitted and directed by the owner's engineer, the trench walls shall remain vertical to a depth of at least 1 foot, 1, above the top of the pipe. The bottom of the trench shall be square or slightly curved to the shape of the trenching machine cutters. Where the contractor has selected sloping and slash or benching as the means of trench excavation protection, item number 700, trench walls may be allowed that are other than vertical. Where the resulting trench width is wider than that normally required by the section of the specifications, the contractor's qualified engineer must submit engineering calculations showing that additional loadings do not result in a need for a stronger class of pipe. If the calculations show that a stronger class of pipe is required, any additional cost shall be borne by the contractor at no cost to the owner. 2. Trench bottom. For rigid pipe where suitable bedding exists, the bottom of the trenches shall be accurately graded to provide uniform bearing and support for each section of pipe on the undisturbed soil at every point along its entire length. For flexible pipe and slash or rigid pipe on unsuitable bedding, the bottom of trenches shall be accurately graded to provide uniform bearing and support for each section of pipe on the minimum subgrade filler layer as established in the bedding requirements of item 404,2, sanitary sewer backfilling at every point along its entire length. Bell holes and depressions for joints shall be dug after the trench bottom has been graded to allow for proper sealing of pipe joints and to allow the pipe rest upon the prepared bottom for as nearly its full length as practicable. Where over-excavation occurs, the undercut trench shall be restored to grade, to the satisfaction of the field representative, by replacement of excavated material compacted to the same density as the surrounding natural ground. Whenever wet or otherwise unstable soil that is incapable of properly supporting the structure or pipe, as determined by the engineer, is encountered in the bottom of the trench, such soil shall be removed to the depth shown on the plans or determined by the engineer and the trench backfilled to the proper grade with a gravel subgrade filler as specified in item number 410, subgrade filler. Trench bottoms for sanitary sewers shall conform to the bedding requirements of item 404,2, sanitary sewer backfilling. The depth of cut indicated on cut sheets, as determined by the contractor, shall be from the offset or cut hub elevation to the invert of the pipe. The depth of cut as indicated on the cut sheet for pay purposes may be more or less than the actual excavated depth. The variation is based on the surface elevation prior to the contractor's operation and the invert of the sewer line. 3. Minimum width of trench. The minimum width of pipe trenches, measured anywhere between the bottom of the pipe and the top of the trench, shall be 12 inches, 6 inches per side, greater than the exterior diameter of the pipe, exclusive of bells. Exceptions apply at special structures, connections, and at temporary structures, such as trench supports. Minimum width shall accommodate backfill placement and testing. 4. Maximum width of trench. Except as stipulated herein or on the plans, the maximum allowable width of trench for pipelines measured anywhere in the pipe envelope, between the bottom of the pipe and 6 inches above the pipe, shall be the outside diameter, exclusive of bells or collars, plus 24 inches, 12 inches per side. Within the pipe envelope, a trench wider than the outside diameter plus 24 inches may be used but must fully meet one of these requirements. A. At the contractor's expense, he shall furnish and install pipe of the required strength to carry additional trench load. Such modifications and calculations shall be submitted in writing to the owner by the contractor's qualified engineer for approval. This requirement will not require special bedding or backfill, unless required by the contractor's qualified engineer. B. Except as provided for on the drawings, specifications, or by the advance written approval of the owner, the contractor, at his expense, shall within the pipe envelope encase the pipe in concrete from trench wall to trench wall, or encase in other pipe bedding material with written advance owner approval. In A or B, excavation wider than the stated minimum that also causes additional work of any kind, including additional pavement or removal and replacement of any surface amenity or utility, such additional work shall be at the contractor's expense. The maximum trench width above the pipe envelope will be governed by the trenching method and work requirements and limitations shown on the plans or included in these specifications. 5. Where water, silt, muck, trash, debris, or rock in ledge, boulder or coarse gravel, particle size larger than 1 3/4 inch, is encountered at the bearing level, the contractor shall, as directed by the field representative, excavate and remove such materials to a depth not less than 6 inches, 6, below the bottom of the pipe and replace with a gravel subgrade filler conforming to the requirements of item 410, subgrade filler. Trench bottoms for sanitary sewers shall conform to the bedding requirements of item 404,2a, sanitary sewer backfilling. 3. Dewatering and care of water. The contractor shall take necessary steps to prevent surface water and subsurface or groundwater from flowing into excavations and from flooding project site and surrounding area. Also, the contractor shall not allow water to accumulate in excavations or at changes detrimental to stability of subgrades and foundations. Accordingly he shall b. Provide, install, and maintain a dewatering, or surface diversion, system with components necessary to deter water from and convey water from excavations. b. Convey water removed from excavation and rainwater to collecting or run-off areas, ditches, and other diversions outside excavation limits. Do not use trench excavations as temporary drainage ditches or drainage conveyance devices. c. Dewatering devices shall be provided by the contractor with filters to prevent the removal of fines from the soil. Should the pumping system draw fines from the soil, the owner shall order immediate shutdown, and remedial measures will be the responsibility of the contractor. d. Upon completion of the dewatering work, the contractor shall remove all equipment and leave the construction area in a neat, clean, condition that is acceptable to the owner. e. The contractor shall maintain groundwater table at least 12 inches below the finished excavation subgrade. f. Dewatering performances. Performances of the dewatering system for lowering groundwater shall be measured by observation wells on piezometers installed by the contractor in conjunction with his dewatering system, and these shall be documented at least daily. The contractor shall maintain a log of these readings and submit them to the owner. No direct payment shall be made for costs associated with dewatering. All costs in connection therewith shall be included in the applicable contract price for the item to which the work pertains. 404. Backfilling. 1. General. Trenches shall not be backfilled until the construction structures or appurtenances as installed conform to the requirements specified. The excavation shall be carefully backfilled with the excavated materials approved for backfilling, consisting of earth, loam, sandy clay, sand, and gravel, soft shale or other approved materials, free from large clods of earth or stones. Where pipe is specially coated for protection against corrosion, care shall be taken not to damage the coating. Where a trench has been improperly backfilled, or where settlement occurs, the identified section shall be excavated to a depth and length along the trench of 50 on each side and beyond the failed area, then refilled and compacted to the grade and compaction required. The use of sand backfill shall not be allowed. All compaction within the secondary backfill zone shall be such that the apparent dry density of each layer shall be not less than 98% within 2 feet of top pavement. These top 2 feet shall not be less than 98% for pavement areas of the maximum dry density at plus or 2% optimum moisture content as determined by tests on samples as outlined in Texas Highway Department Testing Method Tex 113A, unless otherwise shown on the plans. At the time of compaction, the water content shall be at optimum moisture content, plus or 2% points. See Table 1 at the end of this specification for an outline of the bedding and initial backfill requirements for various pipe types. 2. Sanitary sewer backfilling. Backfill for sanitary sewers is divided into three separate zones. A. Bedding. The material in trench bottom in direct contact with the bottom of the pipe. B. Initial backfill. The backfill zone extending from the surface of the bedding to a point 1 foot above the top of the pipe, and C. Secondary backfill. The backfill zone extending from the initial backfill surface to the top of the trench. Materials and placement for each of the zones shall be as described herein. A. Bedding. 1. Existing stable materials and laying conditions encountered at the pipe bearing level which are acceptable for direct bedding purposes for rigid pipe only are: trench bottom at bearing level free of water, muck, debris, rock, boulder, and coarse gravel, particle size larger than 1/3 inch, formations in the face of the bearing level. Coarse sands and gravels with maximum particle size of 1 3/4 inch, 1/3/4, various graded sands and gravels containing small percentages of fines, generally granular and non-cohesive, either wet or dry, fine sands and clayey gravels, fine sand, sand-clay mixtures, and gravel-clay mixtures. 2. Existing unstable materials and laying conditions encountered at the pipe bearing level which are not acceptable for bedding purposes are: water, silt, muck, trash, clay, or debris at trench bottom or bearing level or rock, boulder, or coarse gravel, particle size larger than 1 3/4 inch, formations in the face of the bearing level. 3. Subgrade filler. For flexible sewer pipe to be placed on all types of materials or for rigid sewer pipe to be placed where unacceptable materials as defined in item 2A. 2. Bedding exist at the bearing level, the material shall be removed, as directed by the field representative, and replaced to a minimum depth of 6 inches, 6, or 1/8 of the outside diameter of the pipe, whichever is greater, as directed by the field representative, with subgrade filler material over the full width of the excavation between the undisturbed trench walls. The subgrade filler material shall extend up the sides of the pipe sufficient to embed the lower quadrant of the pipe. Gravel subgrade filler material shall conform to the requirements of item number 410, subgrade filler. 4. Bedding material. The existing material at the bearing level shall be removed and replaced to a minimum depth of 6 inches or 1/8 inch of the outside diameter of the pipe, whichever is greater, with bedding material. The bedding material shall extend up the sides of the pipe sufficient to embed the lower quadrant of the pipe. The bedding material shall be composed of well-graded, crushed stone or gravel conforming to the following requirements unless modified by the engineer: sewer gravel percent passing 1/2 inch sieve 100 passing 1 inch sieve 95 to 100 passing 3/8 inch sieve 25 to 60 passing number 4 sieve 0 to 10 passing number 8 sieve 0 to 5. Payment for additional excavation must be approved by the inspector. 5. Over excavation. Where the trench bottom has been over-excavated beyond the limits defined in this specification due to blasting or removal or unstable material, the pipe shall be concrete encased. Encasement shall extend from the trench wall to trench wall and be a minimum of 6 inches above the top of pipe, conforming to item 407. No separate pay item. 6. Reduced excavation. Where the trench bottom is not excavated in accordance with the specification due to rock or other hard underlying materials, then the pipe shall be concrete encased on all sides and to a minimum of 6 inches above the top of pipe in conformance to item 407, 7, consolidating backfill material. The initial bedding material shall be consolidated to assure it is incorporated from the bottom of the trench up top the pipe center line. A handheld vibrator, commonly used for concrete work, can be used for this purpose. The vibrator shall be inserted every 3 feet on each side of the pipe. B. Initial backfill. Where the pipe to be laid is flexible pipe as outlined in item 402.2.2, flexible pipe initial backfill is defined as backfill having a thickness in its compacted state from the surface of the bedding to a point 1 foot, 1, above the top of the pipe. For rigid pipe as outlined in item 402.2.1, rigid pipe, initial backfill is defined as backfill having a thickness in its compacted state from the surface of the bedding to a point 12 inches, 12, above the top of the pipe. Initial backfill shall be constructed in accordance with details shown on the plans and these specifications. 1. Select initial backfill. Where pipe is to be laid in a rock cut or where rock, boulder, or coarse gravel, particle size larger than 1 3/4 inch, formations exist in the initial backfill zone, or where trench walls or materials are unstable as defined by item 2A. 2. Bedding or where the pipe to be laid is flexible pipe as defined by item 402.2, flexible pipe below, select initial backfill material shall be used. Select initial backfill material shall conform to the gravel requirements of item number 410, subgrade filler. For sewer lines less than 24 inches, 24, in diameter select initial backfill material shall be placed in 2 lifts. The first lift shall be spread uniformly and simultaneously on each side and under the shoulders of the pipe to its spring line. The first lift of select initial backfill shall be inspected and approved prior to placement of the second lift. The second lift of select initial backfill material shall extend from the spring line of the pipe to a depth sufficient to produce a compacted depth of material a minimum of 1 foot, 1, above the top of the pipe. The second lift shall be evenly spread in a similar manner as the first lift. For sewer line 24 inches, 24, in diameter and larger select initial backfill material shall be evenly and simultaneously spread alongside, under the shoulders or haunches of the pipe and over the pipe in maximum 12-inch, 12, lifts, loose measurement, to a point sufficient to produce a compacted depth of material a minimum of 1 foot, 1, above the top of the pipe. No mechanical or hand compaction will be required on an approved select initial backfill material. 2. Optional select initial backfill. Where the pipe to be laid is flexible pipe as defined by item 402.2, flexible pipe and unstable materials as defined by item 2A. 2. Bedding exist at the pipe bearing level or the initial backfill zone, in lieu of the material specified in item 2B. 1. Above, an optional select initial backfill may be used by the contractor where rock, boulder, or coarse gravel, particle size larger than 1 3/4 inch, formations are not present in the bedding or initial backfill zone of the trench and where water is not present at the pipe bearing level. Optional select initial backfill will not be acceptable for installation of pipe over 15 inches, 15, inside diameter or for installation of pipe within the 100 year floodplain. Optional select initial backfill shall conform to the requirements of ASTM D1073, grading number 1 or grading number 4. The plasticity index shall be not more than 12, when tested in accordance with the TXDOT test method TEX 106E. Optional select initial backfill shall be placed around the pipe and to the defined limit for initial backfill as specified in item 2B. 1. Above. Flooding with water will not be accepted as a compaction method and will not be permitted. The minimum compacted depth of completed optional select initial backfill shall be 1 foot, 1, above the top of the pipe. Sand migration prevention collar. When changing the initial backfill from select initial backfill to optional select initial backfill, a 2 foot, 2, long Class D concrete encasement or firmly compacted, consolidated clay encasement between the two shall be provided for the entire height of the initial backfill. 3. Natural initial backfill. Where the pipe to be laid is rigid pipe as outlined in item 402.2.1, rigid pipe, and where stable materials and laying conditions as defined by item 2A. 1. Bedding, exist at the pipe bearing level and initial backfill zone and existing excavated materials conform to those defined in item 2A. 1. Such excavated natural materials may be utilized as initial backfill material. For sewer lines less than 24 inches, 24, in diameter natural initial backfill shall be placed in 2 lifts. The first backfill material shall be spread evenly alongside and under the shoulders of the pipe and thoroughly compacted by means of hand or mechanical tamping. All compaction shall be such that the apparent dry density of each layer shall not be less than 93%, of the maximum dry density as determined by tests on samples as outlined in TXDOT test method Tex 113E, unless otherwise shown on the plans. The in situ density of surrounding natural ground adjacent to trench walls will not be considered in establishment of control density. 93%, is the required minimum unless otherwise shown on the plans. Flooding with water will not be accepted as a compaction method and will not be permitted as associated with any backfilling operations. Density shall be tested in accordance with the requirements of ASTM D2922 for sewer lines 24 inches, 24, in diameter and larger. Natural initial backfill shall be placed alongside and over the pipe in 12-inch, 12, loose measurement, lifts and shall be compacted in the manner prescribed above for smaller lines. C. Secondary backfill. Secondary backfill is defined as backfill from 1 foot, 1, above the top of the pipe to the top of the trench. Secondary backfill shall be constructed in accordance with details shown on the plans and these specifications. Secondary backfill shall generally consist of materials removed from the trench and shall be free of brush, debris, and junk. Rock or stones having a dimension larger than 6 inches at the largest dimension shall be sifted out and removed before the material is used in the secondary backfilling zone. Secondary backfill material shall be primarily composed of compactable soil materials. The secondary backfill material shall be placed in maximum 12-inch loose lifts or as directed by the design engineer and/or inspector. In special cases where excessive width and/or depth of the trench permit, and only with approval of the San Antonio River Authority representative, larger rocks may be incorporated into the backfill provided that the surrounding compactable soil may be properly and adequately compacted. Such oversized rocks shall be used only where the pipe has at least 5 feet, 5, of cover over the top of the pipe, and where the top of the rocks are at least 2 feet, 2, below the street or ground surface. These large stones may be placed in the secondary backfill provided they are well separated and arranged so that no interference with backfill settlement or the initial backfill zone will result. Secondary backfill material shall be composed of primarily compactable soil materials. Water jetting or water flooding will not be permitted as a method of compaction. Secondary backfill shall be compacted to the required density of 93%, using any size and type of equipment which will give the required compaction without damaging the pipe, bedding, or structures. The depth of layers, prior to compaction, shall depend upon the type of sprinkling and compacting equipment used to achieve the required density and the test results thereby obtained and shall be a maximum of 12 inches, 12. Prior to and in conjunction with the compaction operation, each layer shall be brought to the moisture content necessary to obtain the required density and shall be kept level to ensure uniform compaction over the entire layer. Establishment of the optimum moisture and density will be in accordance with TXDOT test method Tex 113A. Each layer of backfill must provide the density as required herein. Soils shall be sprinkled as required to provide not less than optimum moisture nor more than 4%, over optimum moisture content and compacted to the extent necessary to provide not less than 93%, 93% of the maximum dry density as determined by tests on samples as outlined in TXDOT test method Tex 113E, unless otherwise shown on the plans. The in situ density of surrounding natural ground adjacent to trench walls will not be considered in establishment of control density. 93%, 93% is the required minimum unless otherwise shown on the plans. Flooding with water will not be accepted as a compaction method and will not be permitted as associated with any backfilling operations. Density shall be tested in accordance with the requirements of ASTM D 2922 non-swelling soils. Soils with plasticity index less than 25 shall be sprinkled as required to provide not less than optimum moisture and compacted to the extent necessary to provide not less than 93%, 93% of the maximum dry density as determined by tests on samples as outlined in TXDOT test method Tex 113E, unless otherwise shown on the plans. After each layer of backfill is complete, tests may be made by the engineer. If the material fails to meet the density indicated, the course shall be reworked as necessary to obtain the indicated compaction and the compaction method shall be altered on subsequent work to obtain the indicated density. At any time, the engineer may order proof rolling to test the uniformity of compaction of the backfill layers. All irregularities, depressions, weak or soft spots which develop shall be corrected immediately by the contractor. All work within the county street or state highway right-of-way must meet the indicated requirements in this section as a minimum and shall meet the requirements indicated in the plans or the permit issued by the county or state when their requirements are more stringent. Prior to the start of construction, the contractor will be responsible for contacting the appropriate TXDOT office or county commissioner's precinct office and for coordinating his activities with the operating procedures in effect for utility cut permits and pavement repair under their jurisdiction. Approval for all completed work in the state or county right-of-way must be obtained from the appropriate official prior to final acceptance. All work within the railroad right-of-way must meet the requirements in this section as a minimum and shall meet the requirements indicated in the plans or the permit issued by the railroad owner when their requirements are more stringent. Approval for all completed work in the railroad right-of-way must be obtained from the railroad owner prior to final acceptance. 3 seepage retainers. To prevent piping and slash or seepage along the bedding and initial backfill zones, where porous material including subgrade filler is used for backfill, seepage retainers are required at an approximate spacing of 180 feet. Retainers are also required 20 feet upstream and downstream of each manhole installation, as applicable. Seepage retainers shall be 18 inches thick and extend the full height and width limit of bedding and initial backfill. Seepage retainers are similar to sand migration prevention collars, see section 404,2b, 2, and shall consist of Class D concrete encasement or firmly compacted, consolidated clay encasement. 4 trench surface restoration. The surface of the backfilled trench shall be restored to match the previous existing conditions. This shall include final grading, placement of topsoil and seeding, placement of sod, such as at homes or businesses that had maintained lawns, or other unprepared and prepared surfaces. Trenches in alleys actively being used by vehicles, such as trash pickup, vehicle parking, etc., shall be restored by grading and compacting to 98% or higher with a minimum of 4 inches of flex base materials for the entire width of the alley. Alleys not actively used by vehicles shall be graded and compacted to 98% or higher, then spread grass seed for entire width of the alley. Trenches in paved streets shall be covered with a temporary all-weather surface to allow for vehicular traffic until the final asphalt/concrete paving is complete. This surface shall be a minimum of 4 inches compacted and rolled asphaltic black base, either hot mix or cold mix applied. It is the contractor's responsibility to maintain this surface until the final street restoration is complete. Temporary street striping may also be required. This surface must be removed prior to final asphalting. All street work shall be done in accordance with the latest City of San Antonio Public Works, or other city as applicable, requirements. Included in this requirement is replacement of any curbs or sidewalks damaged or removed during the construction. No separate payment for the surface restoration is permitted. The cost for this work must be included in the appropriate bid item. 406 Disposal of excavated materials. The excess excavated material, not utilized after all fill requirements have been met, shall become the property of the contractor, and he shall dispose of it by hauling and wasting outside the limits of the right-of-way of the project and of public thoroughfares and water courses, and in a manner meeting the approval of the owner's engineer. 407 Quality Control. 1. The contractor shall procure, store, and place materials from either on-site or off-site sources which comply with the specified requirements. 2. Quality assurance testing. The owner shall have such tests and inspections as he may desire performed by a nationally accredited, independent testing laboratory for his guidance and control of the work. Payment for such tests shall be the responsibility of the contractor, including the material proctor tests and density tests. The contractor shall provide access to the test area, associated trench excavation safety protection, and backfilling of the test areas. The frequency and location of testing shall be determined solely by the owner. The owner may test any lift of fill at any time, location, or elevation. 3. Quality control testing. The contractor shall be responsible for compaction in accordance with the appropriate specification. Compaction tests will be done at one location point randomly selected or as indicated by the SEWER inspector/test administrator, per each 12-inch loose lift per 400 linear feet. Note: tests requirements above are indicated as a minimum requirement, but may be subjected to follow more stringent requirements as established by other appropriate agencies, such as City of San Antonio Public Works Right-of-Way Management Plan, etc. Note: any failed test shall require the contractor to remove and replace that layer of backfill to 50 feet from either side from the failed test location. The contractor will also be required at no cost to SEWER to provide 2 additional tests at the replaced location where the initial test failed, and at one location point, randomly selected or as indicated by the SEWER inspector/test administrator. Note: sanitary sewer laterals will be subject to compaction tests at the discretion of the SEWER inspector/test administrator within 400 linear foot segments. Any failed test shall require the contractor to remove and replace failed backfill. The contractor will also be required at no additional cost to SEWER to provide 1 test at the replaced location where the initial tests failed. Contractor shall be responsible for all costs associated with supplying material for the proctor and density tests. These tests shall be performed by a nationally accredited, independent testing laboratory. The contractor shall provide access to the results of the material proctor tests to the owner prior to performing any backfill operations. The contractor shall provide access to the test area, associated trench excavation safety protection, and backfilling of the test areas at the contractor's expense. The contractor will determine in-place density and moisture content by any one or combination of the following methods. ASTM D2922, density of soil and soil aggregate in place by nuclear methods, shallow depth, D1556, density and unit weight of soil in place by sand cone method, D2216, lab density of water content of soil and rock, D3017, water content of soil and rock, shallow depth in place by nuclear methods. 406 Measurement. Excavation, trenching, and backfilling will be considered subsidiary to the amount bid for item 402 sanitary sewers, and installation will be measured from center of manhole to determine the actual horizontal distance. 407 Payment. Excavation, trenching, and backfilling will be subsidiary to the contract bid price per linear foot complete in place for item 402 sanitary sewers for the size of line constructed. Said price shall be full compensation for furnishing all materials, trenching, pumping, bedding, haunching, initial backfilling, secondary backfill, concrete plugs, concrete or clay seepage retainers, laying and jointing, tamping, water, labor, tools, equipment and other incidentals necessary to complete the work. Table 1 shows bedding and initial backfill requirements.